Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Well, hello and welcome to the August 2nd edition of Basis Loaded with Joe Schmit. I am Joe Schmit. This episode, as always, is produced by Paige Driscoll, and what we do here is break down the latest from the NDPSR report, starting with butter. This butter number coming in at $254.20 is a minus 1.5 to the CME 1 week average of $255.95. We traded 25 loads on the CME last week. That volume is showing up here. This week's NDPSR volume north of 4.1 million pounds, and that's about 500,000 pounds over our expected 3.5. The big story on this report is this shift in basis. You remember that in butter we moved from the mid 40s to our current level in the 260 neighborhood. Basis when the CME spot market was in the 240 neighborhood was largely positive. As prices here on the NDPSR have climbed into the mid 50s, that basis has shifted from positive to negative. So the increase in butter prices at the CME slowed to transition here to the NDPSR. As prices increase, it looks like buyers have refused to pay up step for step with the CME. We'll see how things shape up as the market approaches the 260 level. Up next, of course, is our cheese complex. We'll start with blocks, 153.91. That's a nice number. That represents a plus 5 to the CME 1 week average of 148.60. Blocks moving a little bit higher than expected, keeping up with the gains that we're seeing on the CME. It's interesting, next week we move another 15 cents higher. So I would expect that the NDPSR would have trouble keeping up with that gain. But as far as this final week of July pricing goes, 153.91 is a respectable number. We traded 8 loads on the CME, so as that volume on the CME diminished, prices moved higher, rapidly higher in some cases. For this final week of July, this 153.91 is a good price for the block and higher than expected basis on higher than expected volume. Volume coming in just a little bit short of 13 million, about 400,000 pounds over our expected 12.5 million pounds on the NDPSR. The other side of the cheese coin, of course, is the barrel market, 148.44. That represents a plus 3 to the CME 2 week average of 145.72. So in the barrels, the barrel market is having a hard time keeping up with the moves that we are seeing at the CME, lagging a little bit, as we used to say. What's interesting is that 2 week average moves from that 145.72 level up 20 cents for next week's benchmark. Buyers seem to be unimpressed with the gains that we're seeing at the CME. This sales volume on the NDPSR report below our threshold of 13.5 million pounds. So a little bit of a disappointment on both price and volume, in contrast to the block, which overachieves on both accounts. So all in all, we'll have to say the barrel market, a little bit of a surprise with the fact that it can't keep up with the gains that we're seeing on the CME. Up next, whey, 25.25. That represents a plus 2 to the CME weekly average of 23.40. We traded 19 loads on the CME last week. That equates to about 800,000 pounds. And again, we're seeing big volume here on the NDPSR. Just a little bit short of 6.5 million pounds. So about 2 million pounds over our expected 4.5 million volume level. So when you add 4.5 plus that 800,000, we still have about a 1.2 million pound bulk sale that went in this week. It's interesting. Prices here seem to be flattening out a little bit with the flattening that we're seeing at the CME. When we're talking about whey, we always like to look at this July 15th NDPSR of 25.96. So sales that occurred last week were based on that July 15th number, and it looks like the manufacturer had to discount about 0.7 cents from prior week's NDPSR. So good volume moving and prices flattening out similar to the CME in whey. And then lastly, non-fat, 112.76. That represents a plus 3.5 to the CME 1 week average of 109.15. 3.5 is higher than our expected basis. That 109.15 was the low week at the CME. Prices have recovered a little bit since then. And at that 112.76 level, the manufacturer was able to move almost 25 million pounds. So call it 5 million pounds over our expected 20 million pound threshold. Big movement of weight on the NDPSR. The manufacturer was able to clear a lot of product at that 112.76 level as the non-fat market grinds lower and is showing signs of flattening out as well. So as I said, this is week 5 of 5 for the July pricing cycle. And the final for July class 3, a little bit lower than I expected last week, 13.77, with the July class 4 coming in at 18.26. If you carry current CME prices out through the remainder of the 4-week August pricing cycle, we still have a lot of work to do on August, but if you carry current CME prices all the way out through the 4-week August pricing cycle, getting 17.15 for an August class 3 final and an increase in class 4 all the way up to 18.65. So on behalf of Paige and the entire EverAg Insights team, thanks so much for joining us. Bye-bye. This episode of Basis Loaded was produced in cooperation with EverAg. At EverAg, we partner with every corner of the agriculture industry, from dairy to livestock, crops, and agribusiness, to deliver intelligent supply chain and risk management solutions. We are EverAg, everything agriculture. Learn more at www.ever.ag/everything.